Hey guys, welcome in for another episode of Amazing Entrepreneur. This is episode 10 titled Tax Strategy 101 with my friend Francoise Blanco from Blanco Law Firm. If you have any questions on business entities, this is the episode for you. Hello, hello. Welcome again to another episode of Amazing Entrepreneurs. My name is Michael Riley, and this is if this is your first time, this is a podcast. Our tagline is Real Talk, Share Growth, and this is where we talk to entrepreneurs and hear about their story. And I'm very, very excited to introduce to the guests and the listeners, Francoise Blanco. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure being here. So I'm an attorney. I have my firm, Blanco Law Firm. We focus on providing tax defense and tax consulting work effectively to clients, mostly international clients.
Okay.
So if imagine you're a foreigner, someone who's not in the U.S., someone coming from Mexico, Brazil, or something like that,
Okay.
and looking to invest in a business here in the United States or real estate, I can help you structure that investment and make sure it's tax efficient. And the IRS occasionally will like to send out love letters, and I can definitely help you out with those as well because I have a few of my letters of my own that I can send out.
Understood. All right. So I got you. So you're our best friend, right?
Oh, I'm one of a good friends to have in case you have that.
Amen to that. So I like to start off a little bit about your journey here, how you why tax law, and and then we're going to kind of get into the specifics and the nitty gritty as to why should I, and I say me because I'm an entrepreneur, small business owner, right?
Of course.
And so why should I care? And I know there's a lot to that, but let's start from scratch. So Blanco Law Firm, you guys, tell me a little bit about the establishment, and where we can find you.
Definitely. So we're based out of Coral Gables in Miami.
Okay.
We've been operating for about 10 years now.
Beautiful.
A lot of the operations has started out with me, and then it's expanded out depending on the necessity of the clients and the needs and everything like that.
Okay.
And then with myself, I've wasn't born here, but definitely grew up in Miami.
Where were you born?
I was born in Honduras.
Oh, really? Yeah. So you're an immigrant. So this is you kind of
I am, yeah.
This is why, or I'm imagining one of the reasons why you do what you do.
I think to a certain extent, I think everybody at one point or another is looking to come to the United States and have some connection to the U.S. just because now we're in a global environment.
Understood. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, that's always had an influence, right, in terms of coming over and seeing the difference between the two countries and how it all develops. And so grew up in Miami, went to FIU, Florida International University, studied a little bit of finance.
Okay.
At that time, enjoyed finance a lot, but from work perspective, it was either you go to New York or you go to Chicago.
Right.
And then I was also looking at the idea of just law school in general, because it was at that point in time, it was something that was interesting to me as well as a possibility.
So it's not anymore.
Oh no, it still is. It definitely is.
No. I get what you're saying.
No, but I like that one though.
Yeah, but it's funny because we're recording this. We just had by the way, a little undercarriage of content producing and or podcast making. Sometimes you create multiple episodes on the same day, but we had
just change the shirt.
Well, I mean, not even this case. I wore the white just because it's nobody really knows. It's probably they have a bunch of but I have a pink or a yellow, and I was decided not for that because I actually looked at it. I was like, nah, I'm going to stick with the white so people aren't going to differentiate the two. But we had another attorney on earlier, and he was talking about he went to FIU as well.
Okay.
And I jokingly said on that one, it's with the lawyers, it's hey, I woke up and I was like, you know what? I'm not arguing enough. I decide, what do you want to be when you grow up? Is I want to argue.
I want to argue.
I want to argue about financial, and specifically, this is I want to argue with the IRS.
Yes, that's always a good argument,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, it depends if you're winning.
If you're winning.
Yeah.
I think even if you're losing, it's always good to just make it a little difficult if need be.
Gotcha. So you started off in finance, and then you're like, you know what? I kind of want to be a mixture of the two a little bit.
Yeah, so I went into law school, did St. Thomas. There they have a good tax program for tax classes, and then from there I went off to UF, University of Florida, to get an LLM in tax, which is just a Master's of Law in Tax.
Okay.
Enjoyed it. Did it on the international basis.
Okay.
And then from there, went out into practice and started, in my early years, worked out with a firm out of Switzerland.
Okay.
That helped a lot of you. You had U.S. taxpayers who, conveniently had some accounts in a specific country.
Of course it's Switzerland, right?
Switzerland, correct.
The former guest, our friend David, he was telling me about, there's certain countries that where if you're going to sue somebody, it's a business entity in the Cayman Islands, it's probably a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
So Switzerland is really, it's a banking. Is that where people keep money?
If you want to, if you look at money as more as potential returns, right? Either being active income, passive income, I think. At one point or another, Switzerland, still is to a certain extent, but yeah, Switzerland was a place to be.
Okay.
In terms of keeping accounts and having money managers manage your funds. And now that the world is a little bit more connected technology-wise, it's become a little bit more difficult.
They've got a little bit more competition?
Yeah, I think more disclosure, more transparency to it, which I think to a certain extent also is happening the same thing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, where imagine, people, the allure of a specific allure of Switzerland was, your home country didn't have so much jurisdiction in Switzerland to be able to ask for stuff, but now that's changed a little bit. And we're seeing that as well with a lot of cryptocurrency and the like, where now you have all these exchanges doing reporting. So it's in a similar fashion in that sense.
Yeah. Cryptocurrency is an interesting thing. It's how we started our business, was to build miners or whatever, because I was fascinated. But the technology still is great. It's just
blockchain and everything.
Yeah, the technology is great. It's just there's unbelievably poor actors within the space, and then human greed is just kind of like the downfall of because it still is fascinating technology, but it's held back by humans.
Yeah, I think that's a proper way to put it in that respect. But I think it's a wonderful technology. I think it has a lot of various applications with respect to the blockchain and everything associated to it. And really, it's just a reporting thing. Once the reporting thing gets cleared up, it doesn't take away from any sort of legitimacy from it or application. I think it's very world bound, as you said. It's very limited by how people want to use it, where people want to take it.
Well, I will say this, and try not to dive in too deep of a hole, but it's big in our space because of, we're big in, I work in IT, and if you are not familiar with ransomware and you're listening to this, you should learn about it. 60% of businesses that lose their data never recover from that. So ransomware is basically they lock everybody's computer. Every computer has its own key. Yep. Key's mathematically improbable to be cracked. So they say, hey, you want to buy your information back or your data back. And it is debilitating. It shuts down entire organizations. Now, I bring it up is because the ransom is paid usually with Monero, which is it's basically privacy to where you can't track the transactions. Right. I said, jokingly, the easiest way to launder money is by dumping into Monero, do a couple transactions. You, by definition, can't. It's improbable to crack. It takes hundreds of it'll take hundreds of years. There is no NSA secret decoder that doesn't exist. And so it's just a very complex math problem that is just you're not going to solve. And then but the problem is taking that Monero and then cashing it out to something that you can use it. And so,
Yeah.
but that's what the bad actors in the state, and honestly, some of the biggest thefts in the world in history have happened using cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fat, and you deal a lot with like money management and wealth management, and asset management.
Asset management, money management, operations. I mean, most of my practice nowadays focuses on leveraging foreign operation with U.S. operation.
Okay.
And by foreign, I mean, if you have a company, if you own a company outside of the United States and you're operating your home country and you want to move and expand into the United States, there's a structuring process where you need to coordinate both parts so that it meshes well.
Right.
That's a lot of the practice.
Quite. So you started your own practice, and so tell me about the form. Why?
I've always been, the formal setting of being in a big firm, or I've always enjoyed having that liberty. Right, during college, I've always had a bit of a side hustle. There's always been a side hustle somewhere, and
it's interesting. So, you have any notable ones that kind of pop to mind?
I did tutoring for a while. Made a pretty good, and during college, that's how I maintained myself for the most part. Tutor a lot of people, go to school and then tutor on the side, and that was really a big thing.
This is like the real live Suits guy. You ever seen that show?
I've seen the show.
Yeah, this is like the real live Suits guy. I saw it on Netflix, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And my ex-wife was like, you remind me of this one guy on there. And I was like, gee, thanks. So
I think you're being too kind with your words.
No, but basically the crux of it is there's a guy on the show that takes the LSAT for
other people.
For other people.
He's like a super genius, has great memory.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm not there.
And don't listen. He's being bashful. So he's definitely there. So when did this happen? When did you start the firm?
So started the firm at that time. I actually started the firm while I was in my LLM program.
Okay.
Because at that point you were barred. After you go to law school, you got to take the Florida bar. In my instance, we're in Florida. Take the bar, get licensed. Once you're licensed, you can start operating. During those first couple of years, I worked with a lot of other attorneys on a contract basis and started learning a little bit of the ropes and everything. And it helped me out because having various attorneys, you get into a lot of different practice areas.
Right.
And also good networking, right? And with the networking, that led me to connect with this firm in Switzerland, and then through that, it just has kind of been developing.
Understood. So how long have you been doing it? I'm assuming you're working with your firm full time?
Yeah.
How long you been when did you make the full cutover?
It was pretty much that first year. That first year I started, and it was a process of learning the business and learning the legal side as well. So learning how to get clients, learning operations, implementing a system to push through everything, the matter management.
Yeah.
And along the same time, learning how to do stuff. And I mean, a benefit that I had at that point is that since I was working with various different attorneys, I saw how each one operated, and you can pick stuff here and there based on the operations of how other firms worked. So that was always a benefit. But yeah, it was something that it was pretty much off the bat in that respect.
That's kind of why this podcast was born, because there's by the way, if you guys aren't a part of the groups, we have a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group where we chat and we talk about different aspects of the podcast, and then also business growth, because there is definitely we do IT stuff, you do tax law, right? And that's great, but who's building the business, and so there's like a whole other side of the business that you just have to kind of learn. It's a lot of times it's just trial by fire.
It is.
I fucked that, or I messed that up, and
it's a technical term.
Yeah. Christian, edit that out. No, I'm just playing. But it's we have different aspects of it, such like lead gen,
for instance, that's a very good point that you bring up, because on the business side, you kind of, to a certain extent, I want to say that you're making stuff up as you go, but you really need to adapt to what's happening. Like, for instance, and at least in the legal practice, it was very common to have, you have the office, now you have the employees, everybody comes in, everybody operates, everybody works. with COVID, like most business, everybody went remote, and
Right.
now there's a necessity of like, well, now what you had physically, you need to implement it virtually
Right.
and develop that model now virtually, and no one was doing it at that time. No one knew
Right.
what was right or wrong. You kind of just, hey, this worked. Let's do it. So
Yeah. And, you know, I, through messing it up, and
yeah,
trying different things, because a lot of times, like, you just don't, and this is part of the reason why I started the podcast, so I can learn from, like, hey,
yeah,
different people who work in different avenues of owning a business,
yeah,
right? And it's how do I glean some sort of lessons on that? So, speaking of which, you tax law, entity management, things of that. So you practice in Florida. Do you
yeah.
practice anywhere else, or is it just with attorneys? It's based on where you
Yeah,
are
so
licensed.
with the law you have different levels, right? You have local levels, you have state level, you have federal level.
Okay.
So I practice at the federal level, which is with the Internal Revenue Service. At the state level, it'd
Ah.
be probably like at least here in Florida, it'd be the Florida Department of Revenue.
Mm.
So when you're practicing at the state level, it's preferable that you're licensed in that state, just because that practitioner would be more familiar with the state issues. But
Well, the state law, right?
yeah, at the
Right.
federal level, it's the same thing across the board, across all 50 states. So if you have a federal issue, federal tax issue, I can help you whether you're in Florida or you are in California or in Montana, wherever you are.
So, tax code, the federal tax code. How thick is it?
It's a very
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
various volumes.
Yes, it's like this, right?
Yeah,
So
something
why
like
why do you hire an attorney? Because like that's their job is to be able to argue that, right?
Yeah, let's say on the litigation side, if you have an IRS notice,
Okay.
a lot of that is, with litigation, you're either looking at a controversy, determining whether what the IRS is auditing you for is correct or not,
Mm.
and that can have some arguments in and of itself, or not even arguments, it's more as misunderstandings and corrections sometimes.
That's what we call it, right? Is that the polite way to call it?
Well, as much as I want to say that the IRS or people at the IRS are big bad bean people, I mean, my experience with them has always been very amicable and they're very
Right.
professional with everything. But yeah, to that extent, it's a lot of the times is you have a return prepared and the IRS will look at it and be like, hey, that doesn't make sense. And then once you go through the audit and you break everything down, you're like, okay, that's understandable, or maybe you didn't take it this way, or you should have taken it the other way. So that's where a lot of about knowing the code and the issues pertaining to it come in handy. And then on the collection side is, well, we have this deficiency and now the IRS is trying to collect against you. And you kind of are just trying to reach a payment alternative that's good for both parties.
Yeah. If we ever have it, I tell my accountant every day, I said, Salim, that's why I hire you. I don't pay taxes. No, I say it jokingly, but
That's a good strategy.
Salim, what is this? I ain't paying this. But yeah, they're definitely the guys that you want to pay. Yeah, if you have we'll call it amicable, right?
Yeah,
So
of
we have a good professional a good professional working relationship.
Exactly.
So, but so just so I know the answer to this, but you are not an accountant, right?
I'm not. No.
Yeah, you're not trying to be an accountant or anything of that nature. It's more of a high level tax law sort of a strategy.
Yeah, it's more on the legal side. I mean, with tax resolution, which is the defense side, you can go to an accounting. There's various entities that do it, but most of them can't practice in court. Only an attorney can. And that's really where, if you have a big tax issue that requires litigation, you would probably want to get a tax attorney for that. And then everything else associated with the planning, that's more on, it's a big part acting as a general counsel and helping with the entity management, which in effect, you want to see how the flow of income goes and
So let's dumb it down. So say,
Sure.
and kind of get to like, all right, what does our typical listener have? They went on a legal Zoom or, something like that, set up an LLC. When you say entity, what are we talking about?
So with an entity, every state in the United States has your basic entities are partnerships, limited liability companies, corporations, right? Or
Okay.
if you don't incorporate any of that, you're acting as a sole proprietor. You're not involved in anything.
Okay.
So-
Which is the wrong move, right? Usually.
Usually, depends. It really,
Can I write stuff off as a sole?
You can, but you need to have good record keeping, meaning you need to have a separate account just for the business. You can't commingle funds. There's a lot of rules where if you had an entity, it just becomes so much easier.
Can a 1099 person make themselves an entity?
So a 1099 is somebody who's designated as a contractor. Like, for instance, let's say that you have your business and you contract me. I'd technically be a 1099 contractor because I'm not a full-time employee to your business.
But instead of being a 1099 and being paid on my social, I could maybe do like a LLC, get an EIN, and do, what do they call it, corp to corp?
You can do, it'd be a corp to corp with respect to the transfers that don't necessarily require one, but effectively you can incorporate your business, separate it from yourself personally, and then be able to operate under that business, which has that benefit.
Probably one of the tax benefits. I could then start, we have business expenses, right?
Yeah.
So like if I am, and this is still, by the way, if you're 1099, again, this is all for educational purposes. That we offer no this is.
Does not create an attorney-client privilege. Don't take advice.
Yeah. I mean, do with it as you will. But exactly. I've seen a lot of people that are like, "Hey, I get paid underneath the table. Well, why would you do that?"
Yeah, you wouldn't. I mean, to a certain extent, I understand the allure behind it. But if you look at the benefit, sometimes it's not even a tax benefit. It's more of like, let's say if you want to get a loan, you want to get a house.
You led me to that, and it's, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but it leads me into, we're having another guest. If you guys, I'm not sure where the episodes, it may be right before or right after this, but we have a guy coming on from Lindio who is a lender, and it's specifically about like, in order for you to get a loan, because there's an entire government division that is designed to help collateralize your loan, because they want small businesses to work. You cannot do that if you're getting paid to your Social Security number. So,
I mean, aside from it being illegal in that sense, right? The second aspect of it, from your personal perspective, it's better to show income. It's better to show all your expenses. It just shows. It provides proof and documentation concerning your true operations, right? And like, for instance, you previously mentioned at the listener level, what are some common, right? A common one would be I set up a company and then choose an S-Corp election. And that S-Corp election is, I don't pay any tax on my distributions and I get to take a salary and I just pay on my salary. I mean, that would be one method of planning. But each how I do it. Each type of planning is at a different level, right? In that respect. So sometimes it's not even at different levels. It's different stages. For instance, if you are someone who's looking for financing or actually equity investors, you're probably going to want to set up as a corporation just from the purpose of having shares and the tax issues associated from that, or maybe even a partnership at that point. And it really depends on how much control you want, how much control you don't want. What's your involvement, where you are personally, on the end stage of life, you're more on the passive side than you are maybe on the active side when you're younger. So a lot of those things come into play with respect to everything. But yeah, I mean, full disclosure of your income, I understand that you end up paying more taxes, but if you are an individual who's acting as a contractor, at some point or another, you're going to get Social Security benefits, which are based on the level of income that you're generating over your work history. So it kind of behooves you. Yeah, I need to pay a little bit more tax now, but in the long run, it might help me out in Social Security or anything like that. Just basic retirement, right? Loans are the other categories.
Well, taxes, and then also like if I would again hire a CPA or something like this to do stuff, but like if you are performing work on behalf of your bit, or if you some of that stuff is tax deductible. Again, hire a professional, right? And if the need's there, I will happily bring a CPA on. The number crunchers, I don't know, man. We share service. So we've got a client of ours that that does I say bookkeeping, but he's more than that. He's a CPA, right? So how much money are we talking, like, so if I'm doing stuff like that, how important it is for the entity to be set up correctly?
So, I mean, there's a lot of benefits, right? For instance, if you look at just setting up an LLC,
Right.
just setting up an LLC and not having anything else doesn't necessarily provide you with too much protection.
Right.
Generally, an LLC, you would want to have some sort of operating agreement,
Mm.
which shows how to do it. Most single member LLCs, which is a majority, don't offer any sort of protection. Legal protection, as is imagined, usually need to have a partner or have some sort of operations where it becomes a little bit more different in that respect, or it becomes more as a business concept and business attribute to it. So it really depends on what level you're doing, how much, if you're having a lot of income coming through, you just want to start formalizing the business as you go and make sure that it's working well, right? And it really depends on your objectives. I mean, it's a very broad question. I hate to say it like that, but it really depends on.
No, it is it's kind of, it's what I was trying to get at. It's very important to have somebody to set up the right one. Correct. Because it's going to save you, and I don't know what the right one is. I think everybody has everybody's case is different, right?
Correct.
Depending on what your goals, needs, and wants are.
Correct.
But it's always worth the cost, because you're going to, even if you're like, hey, I'm signing myself up to pay taxes, but there's different alternatives. Yes, you're going to pay it here, but you can deduct here.
Correct.
So
like a good example that comes to mind. I mean, imagine, if you're a real estate investor as opposed to operating an actual business. Let's say you have a gas station. Your objectives are very different. On the real estate investor, if you're really, and that even breaks down into two different types, right? If you're flipping houses, that's all going to be short-term income, which at that point gets taxed at the highest rate of at where we are now, 39%. It may make sense to probably put yourself in a corporation that's taxed at 21%, and you take out a salary and you pay yourself a dividend. And even though you're double taxed, your effective tax rate throughout your operation is lower than you would if you're operating.
No, I'm totally with you on that, because it's like just tax the wealthy or tax the business. It's like no, the real problem is not the individuals. So to me, I don't know. I'm just a guy.
And I definitely I think a lot of taxes are going to be your biggest expense. Imagine like 40%, using round numbers, 40% of that is going to be associated with the expense. I think planning in that respect, just to try to minimize it. If I can, instead of paying 40, I can hold 20 now and then put that 20 reinvest it back into the business and make it grow. That itself accelerates growth. Put it into marketing, get more clients, right? So it's planning in that respect where the focus really needs to lie. And not some, there's aspects where you structure in a way where you're efficient, but a lot of the planning is associated with that. Instead of paying taxes, how can I use it to reinvest in something else? Because, it's a vicious circle, I hate to say, right? Because if, let's say, I can either pay my taxes to the government, let's say I pay $20 to the government,
the worst.
Or I can pay 20 to you, give you business, but now the government taxes you.
Yeah. Well, in the way that I look at it is like, look, taxes provide a purpose. The purpose of taxes is going to provide government, which provides structure to our society. So I'm not bad, but to me, it's like, who would you rather managing it, right? Do you want to see it get wasted doing, stuff where it's like, hey, that's super inefficient. We've been building this road for 15 years and it's never got, and that's at like not necessarily the federal level, but it depends. But it's like, or would I rather have be able to manage where the spend goes and have a more beneficial outcome, or I have a little bit more growth opportunity where I'm going to get more value out of the tax dollars that I already have to spend.
Correct. And I think to a certain extent the tax code is set up for that, meaning you can actively, if you don't want to take any sort of action, you pay the taxes and the government will allocate it as they want to do it. Or, for instance, a charity, you want to set up a charity that has a specific purpose to help a specific something.
Right. Something you care about.
Now that's something where the government will be like, okay, we'll give a deductions to anybody who invests or effectively contributes to your charity if you're handling that, because at that point the government is no longer handling that, right? That's something that's taken care of by private enterprise. So it's a give and take. Really, it really depends on how you want to go. And
you're right. To do it one way or the other. So might as well do it in a strategic way for you and your organization. So speaking of which, If you're expanding, your business is growing, right? And your onboarding starting to become a challenge. Are you concerned about security and have no idea where to start? Are you considering, business is booming and you're looking how to spend those tax dollars and you're considering hiring, or boosting the economy and hiring IT staff to handle your growing technology challenges? Well, look no further than Amazing.tech, your one-stop solution for your fully virtual IT department. With Amazing Tech, we specialize in creating a stress-free onboarding process for your new users. Once onboarded, leave the technical stress of managing your environment to us. Our team of skilled experts is dedicated to keeping your systems run smoothly 24/7. Focus on what you do best while we handle your technology needs. From VCIO services, technology procurement, and CRM management, we handle it all for one low monthly rate. Experience the ease of managed IT services with Amazing Tech. Visit our website at Amazing Tech. That's OHMazing.tech. Transform your IT worries into amazing results. And
my recommendation is to go for it, definitely, especially at this point in the year.
Yeah.
We're now in Q4 of 2023.
Love that, man.
Right now, you should be looking at what your potential tax liability is going to be for next year, and you make a determination. Do I want to pay taxes, or should I beef up my IT and make my business stronger, better? Because
Francoise, you're invited again, brother. You're in. You're in. So best guess yet.
I'm just saying. I think right now is the most appropriate time, and a good discount as well if necessary.
You know what? We'll make it happen. So spend all your tax dollars here.
That is very true.
Well, I mean, I've seen we have definitely had conversation with you like, hey, my accountant says that I need to spend money. So it's either spend money now or I'm going to have to pay it to somebody else later. So, I know we've been talking kind of fairly simple stuff, but I'll kind of go into ours, for example, and then hopefully you can give me a good example.
Of course.
Part of what we deal with a lot is mergers and acquisitions. So companies sometimes get to a point to where they're doing stuff and they do good and they want to expand. Sometimes they buy a business, right? And some of the ways that you can buy business is by keeping books under a specific company or entity. Mm-hmm. And so the way we position ours is we have a holding company, and then we have the holding company owns other companies. So if and when we ever decide to sell a line of business, or if we want to buy another one, from a bookkeeping and tax perspective, it looks very clean. Yep. That would be, to me, and we're very elementary in regards to, because I know a lot of these mega corporations have hundreds of them, right?
Yeah, but I think where you are with the structure you put, that's 80%, 90% of everything that's out there. And sometimes the basic is the best, right? It's not, in its simplicity, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Well, I was actually going to lead in. Can you give me a good example as to a good success or win rate, or something? I know attorney client confidentiality, so I don't need any names, but any specific places where, hey, it makes super you don't want to do it in just this one way. This is a good way that you could start doing it, or when you should consider calling somebody like you.
Sure. So I think to a certain extent, if you have different lines of business, if you're operating a business and you're seeing that you have different service lines or different product lines, at that point or another, you may want to start differentiating between just looking at the different type of liabilities that's associated with each service line, and start looking to set up a structure like you mentioned, have a holding company, and then have different lines, which is very useful, right? At that point, you can have that holding company. That holding company is the entity that presents a tax return, and all you do with the ones below that is group them all together, collect it at that level. A common one that happens is real estate, right? If you are investing in real estate and you have 10 properties, you don't necessarily want to put everything into one LLC. You may want to differentiate them just from an asset protection purpose in terms of someone falls. You don't want to have a lawsuit against your one LLC that holds all your other 10 all your other 10 properties, and now all your 10 properties are at risk. Where if you have one LLC per each one, you can limit that, or maybe 5 for 2, or whatever the number is, right?
Can you bankrupt one and not impact the others?
Yeah, technically, yeah, you could, because one of the subsidiaries you could potentially put in through bankruptcy and take it and go through that process.
I know there's entire firms built on this stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like, I don't want to get you outside of your comfort zone,
No,
but like,
no, not at all. This is part. So part of that is, for instance, piercing the corporate veil, right? Which is a concept that I alluded to earlier. If you just have an LLC and you don't have an operating agreement, you don't respect the formalities, you don't have a separate bank account, you don't have separate books. That makes it a lot easier to say, hey, this subsidiary is really not a real subsidiary. The parent is the one that's holding it. Now that protection doesn't work. But if you maintain that formalities, it's a little bit more difficult to state that working is not a real company. Because if you're operating like a real company and working it, and it really is an active company, you wouldn't have any problems like that in that respect.
okay, so if I do have all of that and I'm like in a QuickBooks or something like that, so it would make sense to have its own individual bank account, money flows into that, and then when you start doing like internal charges from one company to another, and so we start doing like, like if I'm going to go get a loan, it's like, I would do it at a court, or at individual levels and things of that nature.
Correct. And that's where the flexibility, and that's where you would want to have somebody who can give you a bit of guidance in terms of what would be the best option, right? Because it may make more sense to do it at the holding level, because that's the
Right.
one that has all the assets, and from a bank perspective, that one looks better. Or sometimes a subsidiary looks better, and you get the financing through that subsidiary. So it really depends on what your objectives are, what you want to do, and I mean, my other suggestion is to put a trust on top of that, just for estate planning purposes. Avoid having any issues, going through probate, going through a will, interrupting business operations.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, if you look at that, whatever holding company is as an actual, imagine it's like a S&P 500 company that's just giving out dividends,
Right.
and you want to have other investments, put everything under a trust, right? So that there's a lot of things that you can do to organize your business, organize your enterprise, so that it's protected from all levels, not just the business and customer level, but as well as the state level, just inheritance,
Is that what
distribution.
that's what a trust, because I don't know enough about it. My attorney's been, I have a will, but it was looking at like, hey, how can I, what if something happens? Like, how do I divest, the business itself, and then, how do I liquidate it, or, how do I, for the kids?
Yeah. So imagine, let me give you a scenario, a very common scenario. If you have a will, you're subject to going to probate court, which you got to disclose all your assets. If you hold it inside a trust, you can nominate a trustee and put your beneficiaries. If you were to pass away, your trustee would already have title and ownership of all the assets, and he would have instructions, or she would have instructions as to how to distribute that or manage that. If you have a business, to a certain extent, you don't want to have any disruption in the business, and putting key people in place to continue operating the business, or sometimes you maybe have a partner that's going to buy the business and leave your family with
the percent, the value of
the
it.
value of it, and that's the best play, because maybe your family doesn't know how to operate the business, and
I can promise you nobody knows how to operate
so those are different things, different factors to take into consideration.
Interesting. And so the trust is in between the individual and the business.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. See, this half the reason, but like I said, part of this is just a passion project, to where it's like, hey, I truly like learning about, like, different things about, being an entrepreneur, and, things that I don't necessarily know because I screwed it up so many times, right?
And that's part of that is part of the process, right? And laws change, things change, circumstances change.
Well, with you guys, I mean, it's like the tax code is like, I jokingly say it, but I mean, there's like it's an entire thing in and of itself, so it's impossible to stay up to date on everything about it. So
it definitely keeps us busy.
Okay. So, we were talking, you're an entrepreneur yourself. So, tell me one of the challenges that you found from being, the business side of the business, right? So, where do you struggle the most?
I think, aside from taxes, your biggest other expense is your payroll. And a lot of that is management of
Dude,
people.
do you know, like when I hired my first, this was a couple years ago, but like, I was so pissed off about this, and maybe I was unreasonably upset, but like, we hired somebody, and then they're like, yo, we're going to tax you for having an employee. Like, what the
Yeah.
hell? Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to tax me
Yeah.
for stimulating, like providing, like boosting the economy,
Yeah.
and then they pay taxes.
They pay
So you
taxes
pay
too.
taxes to have an employee, and then they pay taxes.
Exactly.
So like all these, I thought all the headhunters were lying to me whenever I used to, because I came from engineer. IT has it's usually headhunters, and they're like, oh well, it costs 20% to you know, whatever you're like, if you're
Whatever your base salary, add 20%.
add 20% to it because the overhead from, and I was like, it's a bunch of nonsense, right? They were not lying. So like they charge like 8 or 9% or something like that. You know, I feel like it.
Yeah. So on top, let's say you pay someone $100,000 a year. On top of that, you don't just, it's not just a salary. You also need to pay FICA taxes on it, which is associated with Medicare, Medicaid, and all these government programs, which is roughly about 15%. Divide that two ways. The employee's paying their 7.5, you're paying the 7.5. And that's the tax you're making reference to. So if I'm at 100,
is that the tax? Because I don't know the specific tax, but that's the damn tax.
And that one, and in addition to that, there's a withholding tax for the employee, where the employer is required to do that withholding on behalf of the employee.
Yeah, thank God we have a payroll company that does that.
It's very important. I think that would be your second expense if you're going to hire people. Definitely
people are stupid expensive. It's not that they aren't, but it's like, hey, if it like. It's like, we'll just hire someone. It's different if you're paying for them, you know, because I can promise you, like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and from a tax perspective, just payroll, the IRS is more interested in payroll taxes than they are in income taxes. In terms of they will go more aggressive against payroll taxes and all these, because these are used to fund programs that are actively operating. So they want to make sure to collect. So it's always important as a business owner, if you have. And this is why it's important, the 1099 employee. If you have someone as an employee, don't treat them as a 1099 because the IRS will come and vice versa.
Oh, yeah. My accountant was like, you got too many contractors. We got to like convert them, you know? And I was like, what are you talking about? This is how the whole thing. And then it was like this. I was like, all right, well, fine. We're paying them the same. And then it turns out, I was like, why is it costing me more money to have the same thing that I was already paying them? Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, you got to pay, you know.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking just the federal. We're not even talking about Florida or the state level where you got to pay for unemployment as well.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the state too.
It depends on the state too.
Yeah, because like we have an employee in Jersey, and Jersey's its own special dog, right? So, So going back to your original question in terms, I think it's just the management of people, right? I think people at the end of the day really do make or break your business, and the relationship and that kind of stuff. And it's really training and making sure that your people are in good shape and are taken care of in that respect, right? So I kind of look at it as a team, you know, and it's a little bit different, you know, because I went from employee non-manager to I own it, and now I have to manage, right? It's like, you know, and I look at it, it's like at the end of the day, what am I trying to get out of the person is a lot of times the question that I ask myself. It's like, all right, I can act like a specific way, or I can be upset, or I can just you know, do something, but at the end of the day, like, this person cost me a lot of money, and so I need to get something out of them. So what's the best way to get what I need out of the person? And maybe it seems like, you know, a little much, but like,
no, I think that's a good line, and I think that's the part where it's more of the management skill in terms of like, how do I bring that out of the person, or maybe the person is great but not in this role, in another role, and that's where the part where it's like, you kind of need to have a good understanding of how your business is outlined and see like, okay, we're going to try this person here, but maybe, you know, they have a good attitude, they're great, but their skill set is not apt to this role.
To handle that challenge.
Let's look at this role and, they fit perfectly here. And then I'm saying in the past, I would have been like, oh, maybe this person doesn't. And where now I'm more like, all right, let me move stuff around. Because as a business owner, you're investing in people, you're investing in training, you're investing in, and sometimes it's just a little tweak, and maybe the wrong line, and you know,
put them in a position to win, right?
Exactly.
Because like, you know, it's like, hey, this person is like, you know, half the, you know, or it doesn't, like, the technical part of it is from an IT perspective, is like, I can teach you a lot of that, right?
You can teach the skill set,
or I can get you to where I need you to be, but it's like, do we gel well? Are you a good employee? Like, do you show some sort, and you know, Gen Z or whatever nowadays, it's like, oh, they want you to give the extra mile or whatever. But like in reality, like, look, it's like I can promise you, I'm not the person. Like, especially on the first couple years, it was like I was definitely the person not making the money, doing the most work.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's not anything like that. It's like I want to know the person that works for me gives a crap.
Yeah.
And I'm not asking much. It's just have like a little bit of,
like interest into the business.
yeah, or I mean, have a little bit of pride in what you do, or realize like, who do you think this isn't some, and I've had like we've had employees not work out to where it's like, what do you think this is? This isn't some sort of like mega corporation. Like, it's me.
Yeah.
And like, what do you mean you think I'm being like, why are you acting this way? Because then I start taking it personal, because it's like, I try not to, but it's like, like, exactly what do you think that I'm doing here that is like harming you? Like, why would you not do that? Because like, to me, there's no good excuse as to like why you were a bad actor in that space, or why you didn't act in like a way that would like be like, I'm not some evil corporation.
Yeah, no, and I think those are all those are the challenges, and I mean, unfortunately, with a law firm, we are a very heavy regulated enterprise. We have regulations imposed as to who can be part of the business, not part of the business. Meaning, I can't partner with someone, at least in Florida, I can't partner with somebody who's not a non-lawyer.
Interesting.
But for instance, in other businesses, revenue sharing is always something where both you can align.
I did not know that about attorneys, huh?
Yeah. So we have, for instance, I can't market. I can't really direct solicit a client. It's not, we have ethics rules that provide how our marketing needs to be done, how we approach clients, and really are.
Of course, you guys have like, of course, the attorney industry has like all these like rules and stuff like that,
and it's to protect the client, and they're very well positioned. I think it's from years of experience through cases of clients not.
Ethics.
But a lot of that has to do with, for instance, a lot of the ambulance chasing, and you have personal injury. And the bar is really, every state bar is really trying to make sure that the representation.
I mean, ambulance chasing's a big thing down here.
Yeah, and that's something that's always being cracked down on, and. So, for instance, other people can direct solicit. I can be like, hey, I can send you a postcard and be like, these are my services, what I do. That, from my perspective, I need to be very widespread so that it doesn't look like I'm just directly soliciting to you, because we're not allowed to do that. That's why you see a whole bunch of attorneys on billboards and stuff, because that's the type of marketing. It's more as a big exposure, and then the client comes to you, as opposed to like, I know you got this issue. And even then, there's rules that permit you to do that, but
because it's like cases or judgments are filed in a public setting, and people can go, oh, I get. And I think maybe I misunderstood, but that's kind of what I was like. I was like, oh, the light bulb just went up on.
And to a certain extent, you could, but there's specific rules that you need to follow. So and for instance, I can't do. It's very difficult for me to do revenue sharing as an attorney to an employee, because it's like, are they a partner? They're not even an attorney.
Oh, you guys don't offer kickbacks.
That's definitely not allowed.
Well, I mean, I jokingly, we definitely do kickbacks. So, no, wait, no, we don't.
I think the terminology is referral
fee. No, it's
So.
I've seen that happen. I've seen it like as an employee, where it's like you saw something go down, and it's like, why did we buy that product? Because that was not the.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. I see why we bought the product. I wasn't a part of the decision making, but it almost got to a point. It was like, there's like, where it's like, hey, there's no reason for us to buy that product unless there was a kickback. Was there a kickback?
Yeah.
And then it's an awkward. It was an awkward conversation, but it was I was meant to be I meant to be antagonistic about it, because like there was no reason to buy that unless there was something like that happening here, and it happens.
And that's the difficult part of running the business, because you don't necessarily want to have that happening in your business, because it's not the vendor now. It's just having that activity, right? And,
Right.
For attorneys, we can do referral fees between attorneys, but with a non-attorney,
I've seen that happen.
You can't do that. So there's specific rules. We have a lot of rules, but for business, not for non-legal businesses, you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of reaching out to clients, reaching out to potential clients. You can cold call and have someone on the phone 24/7, giving them a
We've
call.
been trying that. Yeah.
So, and there's a whole bunch of lead generation mechanisms available. I think in normal business, and then going back to the employees, it's really aligning. Working with some of the bigger companies, I've seen that their top employees are usually directly involved with some sort of revenue sharing or profit sharing or even ownership, small minority ownership that keeps interest aligned with everybody, where the business wants to, where you want to head the business into.
What does a typical engagement look like for, I know it's like, hey, somebody coming international or whatever, but like, if what is hey, I hire Blanco, law firm. Sorry, is that
Yeah,
butcher
Blanco
that?
Law Firm. No,
Yeah,
you're
well, I
good.
just want to make sure because I knew his last name and then, law.
Yeah. So on the litigation side, it really depends on how far along you are in litigation. We provide flat fee services for the
Okay.
most part.
So you do some litigation there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So let's say if you're in examination or you've received a notice, we usually quote you at a flat fee,
Okay.
something to talk to the IRS agent.
Yeah.
And then litigation, it really depends on the
The
complexity.
complexity.
Of
Yeah, I
it,
was about to say that's like, I mean, it really
Yeah.
depends on what's going on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what about the planning part?
And then on the planning, that's also we do provide a flat fee.
Okay.
Planning is usually split into two things: the planning portion, where we just sit down and try to structure something out for you, and that's usually flat fee. And if you want us to be involved in the implementation, which is a bit quarterbacking the whole process with because if you may have your own attorney that you're working with. We're not coming in to replace that attorney. We're just providing an assist.
Right.
And maybe your attorney just
Well, yeah,
needs,
you guys specialize in that, right? Yeah.
So, and then that's on an hourly basis depending on the engagement, and you have a retainer, which really it's an estimate of what we believe might cover the work, and in that respect. So
Gotcha. We talked about a lot of great things. So, it is focused on entrepreneurs. So do me a favor. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel would be beneficial to our listeners?
To a certain extent, from the tax side, definitely pay your taxes. Definitely report everything well. We did that. From the business side, I suppose just hardships in terms of because the entrepreneur lifestyle, like you mentioned, you sometimes have an employee who's making more than you as an employee rather than you as the owner,
right?
Just because that person is actually that person is fielding the business. And I think a lot of the hardships associated with a business, everybody, the first hardship will knock you down, and then like, this is not for me, where it could be like, no, you kind of just need to push through. And there's always where's my next, what am I going to do next month? Right. Because I hate to say it, you could be very successful, but even at a very successful stage, you're like month to month.
Yeah. If you're not bringing in new leads or whatever, it's, it was like, look, if you want to get into, or if you want to start your own business, like you better have some resiliency to you, because like it's not a matter of if you're gonna make some.
You're gonna have low parts.
You're gonna have low parts. I mean, by definition, in order for me to know what a good day is, I have to know what a bad day is like, right? And so like I need to, because I wouldn't be able to identify what a good day is, and you need to know how to get back up.
Yeah.
And we're going to try again. If you don't have the resilience and you don't really give a shit about what you do, you're not going to, you're not going to last, And so I think I echo what you were saying there. It's the resilience is like key. So listen, how can we reach you? What's your preferred method?
So going on my website, blancointl.com. Feel free if you have any request or you need someone to look at your stuff. We'd be happy to help you out and take care of you.
Okay.
Pretty much that.
Just nice. Like, you guys like, hey, have a conversation to see how we could help, or is it like, okay, so that's it, like, it's that gives you ability to understand what the issue is, so that you can provide a quote on like what it would take to order it.
And just get an idea if it even makes sense for us to go.
Gotcha. Because like a lot of times, like from an average guy, it's like, oh, if I say one word to an attorney, they're going to charge me $150 or $200, and it's like,
yeah, no, we try. If you have, I mean, to a certain extent, sometimes it's your best.
Yeah, you're a business. You look, I get it. You're a business. Yeah, well, you're a business. You know, at the end of the day, you got to make money. But you know, understanding or having a conversation about, hey, this is what's going on. Can you help me here? If so, how much it's going to cost? Reach out to the website and fill out the contact form, guys.
And if we can help you, we'd be happy to refer you to somebody who we think would be based on anything that's presented to us.
Well, Francois, was amazing. And speaking of amazing, thanks for coming to another episode of Amazing Entrepreneurs. Before we go, though, I do have a question. We're in the process of, because we're rescoping the title of the podcast. So I want some feedback from you. I asked David, and by the way, by the time you guys listen to this, it'll probably be renamed. But I'm asking, maybe Francois can give me something good here. So the reason why we're renaming is because it's Amazing Entrepreneurs, but the truth of the matter is sometimes I talk to an actual entrepreneur like you, but it's a little limiting because sometimes there's really business drivers or people who have like really good
entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, that are like, hey, they drive business within the business. And maybe they aren't technically the entrepreneur, but they're the guys that like, or the gals that, really have, hey, they can teach me something about like how to generate leads or how to sell. So like, but what we are doing is we are South Florida based. So South Florida based movers and shakers, where they come and share their secrets, is basically the crux of the show. Now, do you have a name for the show that includes the word amazing that encompasses that?
Yeah, amazing business.
Amazing business. Love it. Thank you for that. I'm going to put that down on the thing on our imaginary board right here.
Appreciate it.
I've got a few ones I heard. I heard amazing people. I heard amazing business. I've heard amazing growth. I've heard amazing insights, and I heard so flow amazing. So
that's nice. Actually.
Yeah, it's a little salsa spice to it. You feel like we're definitely. But in any case, thank you so much again. Looking forward to we just developed a relationship. Looking forward to growing some more with you. Again, to our listeners, thank you so much. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, comment, give us a rating. Tell a brother, friend, soul, cousin, second aunt, something like that. If they are an entrepreneur, this is a place for them to come glean some wisdom, some information. My name is Michael Riley, CEO of Amazing Tech, here for another amazing episode. And with that, I will bid you adieu. Yes, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.